I know that among the viewers of my channel, there are a huge number of people who love simple, universal setups with a clear plan for further play and without any sharp tactics. But often this gets criticized, like, it only works against beginners, against stronger players, it won't cut it anymore, you can only beat just anyone with it. Well, today it's time to show you my games with this setup against Grandmasters Live, as well as against the world number 4 entitled Tuesday. Let's go! I also want to say that I'm by no means urging all of you to play this opening. It might not suit some people, it all depends on your playing style. But the games turned out to be truly exciting and interesting. So let's get started. First, I'll show you the opening phase to remind you of the essence of the setup, using games against Baira Kovanova. She was the Russian women's blitz champion, classical chess champion, and Vadim Zvyagintsev, a very strong grandmaster, former Olympic champion, Russian team champion, and with many other major achievements. Since the games were recently played in Blitz at the Dokoyan Memorial, it wasn't possible to fully reconstruct them. But even after the opening, it was clear that I had a huge advantage. And of course, I won both games without any difficulty. So, the essence of this setup is that it works perfectly against the Nimzowitsch defense, or if the opponent wants to play the Neo-Indian system. It also works perfectly against the King's Indian defense. We place the pawn on e3, the bishop on d3, castle, and ideally, well, there are some variations, of course. Usually, we then try to push the pawn to b3, place the bishop on b2, knight to d2, and then go knight to e5 and play 4, and then launch an attack on the king side. But there's a nuance here. Black doesn't rush to play d5, so we might run into difficulties if black puts a pawn on d6 somewhere, then there will be major problems. So for now, we play c4, bishop e7, knight c3. If black castles now, we play d5, because if they capture twice on d5, take, knight d5, knight d5, bishop d5, then there's the blow bishop h7, after which white gets the advantage. The d7 pawn is weak, the rook is hanging, rook to d1. And it's very easy to play as white, which can't be said for black. That's it. So after the move, knight c3, you either have to take on d4, play d5, or, like Baira did, play d6. I played b3, knight d7, bishop b2. So we're still setting up this formation anyway. Castling, and then d5 all the same. That is, after castling, we play d5. Again, you can't capture twice. Well, if black tries to lock up the position, then we play knight d2 and continue with the plan of breaking through with f4 and opening up the king side anyway, because white's pieces are aimed there, and of course, that's the main goal, to launch an attack on the king side, open up the position, just as I did here. e4, and you can actually see that here. If black takes on e4, then after taking on e4 and then on f4, after the move rook to e1, even though white is down a pawn, there are many more pieces involved in the attack, with a direct aim at the g6 square. And I won this game quite easily. This was the position after the opening. The game developed as follows: d4, knight f6, knight f3, e6, e3, c5, bishop d3, d5, played by Vadim, and I played b3. So now, yes, I have the e5 square. After the exchanges, my goal is to castle, place the knight on d2, queen to e2, and knight to e5. Bishop b4, c3, we defend against the check with a pawn. Yes, the bishop is blocked, but for now it doesn't have much impact. And I carried out my plan, put the knight on e5, want to play f4, knight f3, and attack on the king side. So Vadim decides to take the knight on e5, played knight h5 to get to the f4 square, and I played g3. And again, everything is simple for white. That is, put the rook on d1, play c4, knight f3, and transfer the dark squared bishop to the king side. And here, believe me, the position already gives white a huge advantage, almost plus 1.5 according to the engine evaluation. And I also went on to win this game quite confidently. And there was one game left. This was a Blitz tournament, and after the game with Vadim, I had one more game left, also with the white pieces, and it was played against Maxim Turov, also a very strong grandmaster and honored coach. And once again, I chose my favorite setup with the same move order. And I actually managed to win this game in just 23 moves. I'll show you the entire game. I was able to reconstruct it from memory. d4 and f6 and f3, e6, e3. My opponent played c5, bd3, b6, castling be7, c4. Takes on d4, d5, knight c3. Maxim castled, meaning he didn't develop the bishop to b7. There's also a variation after the move bishop b7. I'll show you a game with that as well. Here then, we take, play knight e5, threatening to give a check and leave black without castling. If they castle queenside, our queen goes on the attack. I'll also show you this example from a real Tuesday game. So, after Maxim castled, I took on d5, knight d5, took on d5. It's bad to take with the queen, because then comes rook e1. And it's not clear what to do at all, because, well, bishop e4 is a nasty threat somewhere. And there's also the move queen c2 here, attacking the h7 square and threatening bishop e4. So here black suffers some minor material losses. That's why Maxim took the pawns. But the position is still bad here. Knight e5, simple play. The knight takes a central position and doesn't let the opponent develop. You can't play knight b7 because then comes knight c6, attacking both the queen and the bishop. If the queen moves to e8, then rook e1 pins and wins the bishop with the pin. So black decided to play bishop to d6, but this position is already very difficult because I simply play rook e1, bishop e6, and queen h5 going on the attack. Now I'm threatening the h7 square. If h6 is played, a sacrifice will definitely follow. If g6, then queen takes h6. I want to play bishop to g5. Again, you have to watch out for the sacrifice on g6. So the setup is extremely simple. If after the opening you get a closed position, we gradually attack, put the knight on e5, the pawn on f4, and start pushing forward. If the position is open, white still has an attack, yes. So in fact, it's not that easy for someone who doesn't know this as black to get a good playable position against a setup that seemingly isn't even fighting for an advantage. Maxim played queen to f6, bishop to g5, queen to g7, queen to h4. Bishop to f6 threatens to trap the queen, and bishop to h6 is also a threat. Black's position is causing real problems. 16 moves have been played. The grandmaster, playing with the black pieces, ended up in a lost position. Well, that happens, it happens. This is the final round, the fight for the prizes. After winning this round, I took 6th place in the prizes, sharing 4th place with Sergei Karyakin, among others. Rook to e8, bishop to b5. By the way, you can find the tournament table in the Telegram channel if you're interested. Bishop to b5, improving the bishop, driving the rook away from e8, and also not allowing the knight to occupy d7. After that, you need to find a winning continuation. You need to take advantage of the weak squares. Of course, I drive the queen all the way into the very corner from black's side, and the knight goes to g4. I want to get to the f6 square. After all, you can't play knight to d7 because then you just take anyway with knight to f6. But if you play f5 here, then the queen moves to f3 and creates the threat of capturing the pawn on d5. Black took on d4. Rook to d1. All of white's pieces are active. It's a perfect picture. I mean, it's hard to imagine anything better. That is, every piece is active, every piece is doing something useful. The queen moved to c5, queen to e2. Attacked, or rather defended, the bishop on b2. On b5, attacked the e6 square. With mate in 2 moves, rook to c1 is threatening, and with a discovered attack, the rook is lost. Everything is perfect. Our task, if suddenly the position becomes closed, say, if they play d5, and we get this kind of symmetrical setup. So, castling, b3, possibly c5 here, knight to c6, knight to d2, b6, a3, to prevent the knight from getting to b4. Bishop to b7. We'll play knight to e5, then f4, move the queen to h3, and attack the king side, the black king side. That's our plan. The game overall is simple, similar to the London system, where there's also a plan to attack the king. But here the bishop is not on f4, but on b2. So sometimes you can play c4, yes, if you don't want to go for an attack. You can play c4, but then there might be major exchanges in the center, and the position becomes simplified. This setup, this arrangement, is of course suited for players who are more of a calm positional type, who enjoy strategic maneuvers, aren't big fans of gambits, but at the same time are ready to play active positions and attack the opponent. Well, let's move on to the next games. Let's keep going. A game against Arjun Erigaisi, number 4 in the world rankings. He was even ranked 2nd in the live ratings and is rapidly defeating everyone. The same setup, castling, c5, c4. We already know that it's interesting to play c4 here, because it gives the opportunity to later push d5. Or you can play b3 and simply stick to the basic principles of this universal setup. c4, bishop e7, knight c3, takes, d6. Arjun doesn't play d5 just yet. b3, knight d7, bishop b2, castling, and d5. Well, it's a similar game to the one with Baira Kavanova, only here there's no pawn on c5, and I don't have a pawn on e3 because there was an exchange. And the idea is the same, to push f4 and launch an attack on the king side. Rook f4, knight e5, bishop c2. The bishop is very important because look at how the bishops are targeting the king side. It's very difficult to play as black. Bishop g5, the rook moved to f1, bishop c8, knight e4, the knight joins the attack, bishop e3, check, the king moved away. f5, queen e1. For now, never rush to move your piece out of attack after your opponent threatens it. Don't forget to check your own active possibilities, and only then make a final decision. whether to move the piece or not. Queen e1, the opponent has to bring in the bishop. It's important. And here comes the blow. Knight to 6, which he overlooked. Because after knight d6, there will be queen e5, and after queen takes d6, there will be knight b5 attacking the queen, and the dark squared bishop is opened up. Plus, I have an important extra pawn. That was exactly what all the calculation was based on. He should have played knight g4 here to protect his bishop. Bishop h6, takes, queen e5, just an extra pawn, and of course a winning position. Now it's just a matter of converting it. All the pieces are active again. Rook e1, queen g5, knight e2. I open up the bishop, plus I want to transfer the knight to d4. Knight e4, bishop d4. Well, I decided that the bishop was better because the knight was heading to f2. f4 takes on f4. And then this tactic comes up, because after bishop f4, rook e4 follows, and after bishop d4, still rook e4. And the threat is that if you take on a4, queen e4, the bishop is hanging and the pawn on h7 is hanging. And if you move the bishop away, then still rook e5, and then queen h7 and knight e6. That's how Arjun Erigaisi just demolished his opponent, literally in 33 moves, and their winning position was achieved even earlier. Let me show you another little trap. If we still transition into an open position, that is, we play c4 and then the opponent plays d5, not allowing us to push after castling. Then you have to take on d5, knight to e5, and you get a position with an isolated pawn. Well, with an isolated pawn, you usually get interesting positions with attacking chances. And here, after castling, the queen goes to h5, we attack the h7 square, move the queen to h4 to defend d4, knight to c6, bishop to g5. There's a threat of taking on f6, after which the pawn on h7 will be hanging. h6, take on f6, queen to f4, and here comes a little double attack, threatening mate, and the knight on c6. There's this kind of trap as well. After the move queen to d6, the main thing is to play queen to f3. Now, well, I'm attacking the bishop, and so I can, well, you could also just play bishop to f4 here as an option, and again, the knight is protected. Simply an extra piece. There's also a significant trap if, for example, the opponent's knight strategically comes out to the d7 square, and we then play our bishop to the g5 square, then they might immediately play a 6 here, which could be a very interesting move. And then we'll take on d7. There's also the move g6, right? But if g6, we just take on d7, and after queen takes d7, we capture on f6, on knight d7, we take on e7. So the position will be won, right? Well, that's how it is, basically. There's also the option here to play g6 right away. Well, then we'll play bishop to g5. If they play knight to c6, there's a trap here too, because in that case, there's a winning continuation with bishop to a6, distracting the bishop. And after bishop a6, knight ca6, we take on e7, then capture on f6, the opponent's knight. That's all the games, friends, that I wanted to show you, some new ones, relatively speaking, in this opening line. Once again, the choice is yours. The setup is a good one. I've made a video about it before. I've already explained the setup, the main ideas and plans. Here we've reviewed and looked at some new games. So I hope this video was useful for everyone who likes this setup, and I know there are quite a few of you, and that you'll use it in your own games. But be sure to consider and pay attention to what you personally like. You shouldn't play it just because I recommended it and it works for me. It might not suit your style. If you always prefer open positions, chaos on the board, and gambits, then, well, this opening variation probably won't suit you very well. But if you like calm, measured play and are sometimes ready to go for an attack, then of course this universal setup can become a great go-to option for you. The choice is yours. My job is to show and demonstrate the main ideas.